Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome back to I'm Sicka Church. Give Me Kingdom, the podcast. I am your host, Kay Latimer Ellerby, and today we have a special guest with us. But before we dive in, I just want to remind you that this podcast is all about exploring the complexities of church and people hurt while keeping Christ at the center of our conversations. We are not here to name drop or to push any agenda. We will not disclose any names of individuals or their churches involved for any reason. This is a safe place for all parties. So, with that being said and getting that out the way, let's get started. I want you to meet my guest for today. And you know what, Peace? I don't want to murder your last name. I forgot to ask that. Is
That's
it
okay. So it is originally EK, but it is
EK? Okay.
EK, yes. And most people pronounce it Ike, I mean, for decades now. So if you want to be culturally
Yes.
correct,
I,
it would be
I was
EK.
like, I meant to ask you before, but okay. So today we have with us Miss Peace EK. And I was gonna say Ike, so I'm glad you told me.
Yes, everybody says Ike, but now you know the real
I was
pronunciation.
like, I know it's gonna be Ike or I said Ike at first, but okay. Thank you for correcting me. But anyway, thank you so much for being a guest on this show. Um, this is the I'm Sick of Church podcast, and we're just really talking about reconciliation, healing from church hurt, and really understanding that church hurt is somewhat people hurt. It's not really church hurt, but we'll get into that later. Anyway, could you please tell our listeners a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So yes, I am 38, and I am
Woohoo!
a Pittsburgh to Philadelphia transplant. So I've been in Philly for about 14 years,
Wow.
and I split my time between my career, which is physical therapy, and also ministry. So I'm a worship leader. I love to lead others into the presence of God, and I also have a ministry that I run out of my home. My home is a community space, and so we do certain events that allow people to come on in and feel safe and
Mhm.
meet new friends. And a lot of those events are centered around kingdom activity, whether it's a worship night, or maybe just an open mic night, or a dialogue night, or just a dinner. So I just love having people in my space, and I love curating opportunities for people to meet other people. So
That is so awesome. And I had the opportunity to come to the gathering place. You guys need to look it up. You can give us that information as well so we can make sure we post it. But I had the opportunity to come, and you actually were doing Church Hurt, and it was an awesome, awesome experience. I loved the whole setup. I loved the camaraderie and the community that was there, and everyone just kind of talking. So it was an awesome time. I have to get to one of the worship nights. Um, Hopefully very soon because I love to worship. So congratulations on that. You're doing an awesome job, even in that arena, just bringing people together on a kingdom agenda. So just wanted to let you know that. Um, let's just jump right in. So I know when I first reached out to you and I said, hey, I'm doing this podcast and it's called I'm Sick of Church. What was your first initial thought or reaction?
yes, at first I'll be honest, I was a little hesitant when I saw it. I was like, oh no. Because as much as we all have had our different experiences where we can all admit that we have been there, sick of
Yeah.
church, it can so easily turn into a pity party when we all come together, or this church hurt me, this church hurt me, or into like a church bashing session. So at
Yeah.
first I was like, oh, I don't want to contribute to that. I do want to be honest and vulnerable. But as you began to then further explain the vision behind the podcast, and that there is a redemptive agenda, and that what we really want to do is bring these things to light so that people can talk about them and get healed and whole, and also so that we can help the church be
Yeah.
better for the church. I was all about it. I was like, I'm in there. I'm there.
Yes, 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 yes. And it's very interesting to me because the phrase by itself does evoke such deep thoughts and emotions. And I mean, I've been all the way from one end of the spectrum to the other end, with just saying that out loud to people, but then explaining to them, because one of the things that I really, really, really want people to get, and I'm gonna say it until my head falls off, you're not experiencing church hurt per se. You are experiencing people hurt.
Yes, absolutely.
and not church hurt. But we put this phrase on the church, and then we put all the churches in this one bucket. Like I'm hurt by church. I'm not going to go back to church. When it's not that, it's people hurt. Because if
Absolutely.
you're in a park and you get in a fight with someone, you're not going to walk around and say, "I have park hurt." You're not
Oh,
going to say
it's true.
that. You're not going to say I
True.
had park hurt today or I had work hurt today. No, you're going to say that somebody hit me. So
Absolutely.
I don't know why we change it, the verbiage when we talk about church. So that's one of the things I'm on this, let's change the narrative. It's not really church hurt, it's people in church who hurt you.
Agree. Agree.
But anyway, so I want to give you an opportunity just to describe your own journey in talking about church hurt.
Yeah, I look back on the different experiences that I've
Mhm,
had in the various churches that I've been a part of, and although I have had many negative experiences, now at this point, I'm grateful that I went through a lot of it because it's allowed me to empathize
yeah.
with those who have also experienced woundedness in
Mhm.
the church.
Yes.
And I've experienced all different kinds because I've been involved in many different ministries now in the
Mhm.
14 years that I've been here. I was a part of a church for about 3 or 4 years when I first moved to Philadelphia. And like all of us, when you start going somewhere new, you have high hopes, you're wide-eyed, you're excited, you're making new friends, and all of these things. And
Yes.
and the
Yes.
church was very appealing, it had all the best tech and all the tech team was always on point, and
Mhm.
it had the smoke machines, and
Oh, wow.
it was just but I was young in the Lord too. So, I
Okay.
just wanted to be where things were happening.
Yes.
But as I stayed longer and I began to climb up in leadership, I started to realize that they were emphasizing the wrong things:
Um,
membership, numbers, um, and they were putting a lot of undue hardship on those in leadership, those who were serving,
wow.
requiring things of them that went beyond the normal church congregant relationship, where people began having unhealthy families because they were spending all their time in the church serving, 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 serving. And so I started seeing that there was this upside down, if you would have it, triangle where,
Mhm.
well, I guess it was a triangle where everybody was serving the leadership or the top, the head, the pastor, and no one was being catered to. Their hearts weren't being cared for. There was no soul care involved. And so as I was in leadership, the more and more I saw these things, of course, I always like to do things in order. So I took some of the things I was noticing and also experiencing to
Mhm.
the leadership, and, rather than hearing me out, hey, what are you experiencing? How has it been for you? I was definitely villainized. And I was, I was told that I was, being the devil was lying to me. The devil was distracting me from the Lord's business. And like, there's a myriad of different things that can be thrown your way when you come and kind of butt heads with the man in charge.
Mhm.
And so I was asked to step down from leadership, and then eventually, of course, I left that church. And there's so much more to that story, as you can
Mhm.
imagine. But after some time, when I thought I'd kind of recovered and it was time to step into a new church environment, I joined a new church that felt very healthy, felt very, very healthy. And while I was there in that church, some things occurred where the pastor felt called to move and to take his family down south. And so our church became pastorless. And in many ways, we all became homeless. And so in that interim period, we really didn't have anybody shepherding us. And so things got very chaotic. And I'm always one of these people, I'm like, if I see a problem, I want to be part of the solution. I'm not going to complain. I'm not going to talk behind anyone's back.
Right.
I'm just like, I'm going to go straight to the head. What can I do? Help me help you.
Mhm.
I know we can save this thing. And so that approach has gotten me in trouble often. You would think that it doesn't, but the thing is, when people aren't looking to change, wanting to
Mhm.
change, or willing to make sacrifices to change, the person who is presenting that there is a problem will become scapegoated. And so, although I wasn't causing any of the issues in the church, but really trying to help be a solution, I was labeled as being divisive. During this period, many people had left because we had no pastor, we weren't being shepherded. So I was labeled as the one causing people to leave the church, spreading gossip, telling people this and that about this person, that person, which is not my personality. And once again, I was asked to step down from leadership based on false accusations. So as you can imagine, it was time to leave. And
Yes.
I thought to myself at that point, that's the last time it's going to happen to me. No, I'm done. I'm done. I'm done. And it was actually in that season where I started the ministry out of my house. And it
Oh,
took some healing, because you never want to start something out of a place of unhealth. But in that time, God showed me, hey, there's a need. People need to feel heard, create that space. And so I'm grateful that I was able to birth the gathering place in that time period. But believe it or not, even as recently as 2 years ago, I dipped my toe back into a ministry. I thought, okay, this one is good. I know it's time. I know this is the one. And as I poured everything into it because I believed it. I poured a lot of finances into it. I poured all my time into it. I traveled with this ministry everywhere they went. And would you have it, about a year into that, I was actually let go. They weren't paying me, but that's the best way to say it, for a new worship leader who was younger, more popular, and had a larger social media following than me. And that's how I was told, we don't need you anymore. So I once again found myself in the middle of what we call church hurt. And each time it was harder and harder and harder, because I was like, I can't believe I let this happen to me again. But praise God, he is a healer, and he taught me a lot. And as you said, church is about broken people. And so broken people can break other people. And I think we need to be able to realize that. I know we're going to talk more about that, but I'm here now, and I feel like I have so much experience to offer because I've been on the receiving end. And I've also been a leader. And I'm sure I've hurt a lot of people. When I was in leadership in those churches, I probably contributed to some of the hurt. So, let he who was without sin cast the first stone, but we're all learning to be better stewards. So,
yeah. Wow. That is so awesome. And the fact that you found a way to recover each time, I think that's just awesome that were able to do that, because a lot of people, they get hurt, and, and it kind of stems back. We don't have enough time to go deep, deep, deep into it. But of course, that always stems back to something that happened in your past, so something's triggered inside of you, and then you don't want to be in the church anymore. So I know that this happens. Oh, looks like we got cut off. Did we get cut off? Oh, I'm sorry. My screen went blank all of a sudden. So yeah, just even talking about the story of, things happening, that a lot of people don't give the church a second chance, or maybe they give it a second chance, and then after 2 times they're like, I'm done. That's enough. So even your bravery and your steadfastness to still go back into it and to create a safe place for people to come, I just think that's awesome, because we need it. Like, we really, really, really need it. A lot.
a
whole lot. So thank you for even sharing that part of your journey. I know it couldn't have been easy. And I remember when my church closed, no one did anything to me personally. I think everything was pretty much done, in decency and order as much as it could be. But I did not realize until like 6 months later that I was really hurt by the fact that the church closed, because I thought that was my safe place, my, end all be all, and this is where I'm going to be. And it was like having a funeral. It literally was like mourning somebody dying. And it took a while for me to get over it. And, I'm still friends with most of the people that are there. We hang out from time to time, but that 6 months, I mean, it was horrible.
Yeah, no, I can imagine. Yeah,
It was so horrible.
because it's like your family. You feel abandoned.
Yeah.
You really do.
And then who do you blame? Because it's like, well, no one person did anything to me. This is just something that happened, and we have to get over it. But as I look back on it, I was like, that really was, like a death type of experience for me.
Truly. And I think that played a big role in what my second church went through when the pastor moved away.
Yeah.
A lot of people had bitterness and resentment. How could he leave us? And at that point I was newer, so I didn't have a long-term established relationship. I had just
Mm-hmm.
arrived when the
Mm-hmm.
pastor decided to leave. And so I still had a fresh wind in me. I was like, okay, well, all right, God called him out. So let's we could do this thing, right? Like, and at that point, a lot of people were just, dealing with the pain of abandonment. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that was the beginning of the end for that church, which ended up closing down,
Mm-hmm.
at least in Philly. And the people who were leading it at that point, reopened it out in Delaware. So they were able to kind of revive it to some extent, but not in
Okay.
this city. I think in
Not in this
Philadelphia,
area.
there had
Oh,
been too much damage had been done.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So sad. Okay. I'm coming back now. Coming back. No, just kidding. Okay. So our topic for this month, we're talking about acknowledging and addressing the hurt, kind of understanding the impact of that, and trying to explore, some effects of the hurt um, from individuals, whether it's church related or individual related. But that's kind of what we're doing, just acknowledging it and addressing it, because you can't get healing if you don't acknowledge it. If you don't acknowledge that you're hurt in the first place and then put it in its proper place of who actually hurt you and why are you hurt, it's really hard to get over that. It's kind of like we sweep it under the rug. And I come from a family where we kind of like just push that under there. We're not going to talk about that. um,
Understand.
yeah, so it's kind of like that's not what we don't talk about. That it kind of reminds me of in Encanto, the movie, when we don't talk about
Mhm.
Bruno. Um,
Yes.
yes, I have a godchild that's 5, so I have to watch all that stuff. But yeah, we don't talk about Bruno anymore. That's a past thing. So um, just acknowledging it and addressing it and doing it in a healthy way, that the person who is offended or has been in it, or even the person who was the person who made the offense. Because a lot of times, like you said, I know as a leader, and I mean, I was an elder. I was an elder for many years. I was over ministries, and I know for a fact that I didn't always handle people correctly.
Mhm.
And I don't think I was even mature enough to know that I wasn't handling it correctly, because I was just following what I saw. And then I wasn't even mature enough to go back and say, you know what, I apologize, because I really
Absolutely.
didn't know that. I didn't
Absolutely.
know what I was
Yeah.
doing.
Yep.
Um,
Absolutely.
so, it goes both ways, because I have to take responsibility for what I did or what I said, as well as how that affected that person. And,
Yeah.
I even think back now, like, wow. And I always say, God, if I did that to anyone, please, reveal it to me so I can go back and apologize or something. I just don't want that to be a weight on myself. And I would hate for someone to not go to church because of something that I said or did,
Absolutely.
around them.
Mhm. Absolutely.
So that's just my personal rant for a
Mhm.
second or two. Um, but yeah, I really just wanted to kind of talk about that. I think I sent you the scripture, but I was reading a book. It's actually a book on church hurt. And one of the scriptures that was in there, it really just, I don't know why I never, well, it's lots of scriptures in the Bible, so you don't necessarily see all of them or remember them all. But
Mhm.
this was in Psalms 55, and it was 12 through 14. And it really kind of drove home what I was feeling about, um, people that you become close to in church. And so it says, it's not an enemy who taunts me. I can
Mhm.
bear that. And I was like, yeah, because if you know that the person is your enemy, then you kind of have your defenses up, so you're not so relaxed and expecting anything to happen. Then the next one says, it was not my foes who so arrogantly insulted me. I could have hidden from them. So if I know you're trying to do something to me or you're trying to hurt me, I'm gonna get out the way. No problem. I'm
Yes,
gonna
of
hide
course.
myself. Um, that the next ones, it was like, instead, it is you, my equal, my companion, my close friend. What
Yes.
fellowship we once enjoyed as we walked together to the house of God. And I
Mhm.
was like, this is like everything that I'm saying in a nutshell, because
I'm telling
like,
you.
how crazy is that? And so that brings up this whole thing about trust. Like, I allowed that into my inner circle.
Yeah.
I felt like we were close, and then something happened. So, just to kind of unpack that, what are your thoughts about that? I know it's tough.
Yes. Well, it is painful when somebody that you go to for solace and
Mhm.
somebody who is a confidant, um, you let them in, right? So they know everything about you. They can hurt you more because they know more than most about you. And so
Yeah.
it is very painful when you're wounded by somebody who's that close to your heart. But I think even further than this verse, which talks about a companion that wounds you, is someone who you look up to. Because
Hmm.
I think that's even a deeper level of wounding. And I think what a lot of pastors don't understand is that when someone comes to you, if they join your church or someone joined your congregation, whether it's right or wrong, the truth is just that they are looking to you as a model for God.
Yes.
Now we know that no man is God and no man is perfect.
Right.
But unfortunately, that is human nature. When we look at the man of God, the pastor, the person leading a congregation, they to us are the person who is closest to our example of who God is, or how God should treat us, how God views us, how
Hmm.
they interact with us. So it is a very high calling.
Yeah.
And I tell people, it's something where like you should approach that with fear and trembling. If you're not called to be a pastor or a leader in the church, don't touch it with a 10-foot pole,
Yeah, absolutely.
because you will do so much damage. It is very, and that verse, I love that passage in scripture where it talks about how serious God takes it when
Hmm.
someone hurts his children. And I don't think it's just children in the natural, because we're all God's children. It says it'd be better if they had a millstone tied around their neck and they were thrown into the sea. That's how serious it is. So it is a high calling. And I know that when that trust is broken, I don't know many stories where it's been recaptured. It's a very difficult task. And so the damage that's done oftentimes leads to long term damage. And the problem with that is that it's not just the relationship that's damaged, but because we look to our pastors as an example of who God should be to us, we then project it onto God. And that's why
Hmm.
so many people have long term spiritual death after church hurt.
Wow.
So, how do you regain trust? Sometimes, most times, in my experience, you don't. But I think that if you seek the counsel that you need, you can get healthy again, and that I know is possible. Now, a lot of people are so wounded that they don't even do that, and it becomes a lost cause. And oftentimes it's not even wise to regain trust, because some of those people you don't really they shouldn't be in your life. But the real question, I think, rather than regaining trust, is forgiveness, because that plays a role in your own healing. So there's a lot that goes into how you recover from church hurt. It really is.
Yeah, I agree. And I think that, I always go back to the scripture that if we do things the way that the Bible tells us to, instructs us to, if you have an alt with your brother or your sister, you go to them. And that doesn't always work. But the biblical standard is you go to that person and you talk to them. If that doesn't work, you take someone with you. If that doesn't work, then you go up the ladder to the next person. And I think a lot of times that, it's kind of, I won't say brushed off, but I think that in their attempt to not be not be uh, attacked is I guess we
Right,
can use
right,
that,
right.
attacked, that they may say something or do something, or they try to brush it off, and then even when you go to other people, they're trying to protect that
Yes.
leader, so they say, and then it becomes this big snowball, and
Yeah.
all you were trying to do is get understanding about something,
Absolutely.
because maybe, for me personally, I always try to look at myself. I'm inward facing first, like, did I say
Yeah.
something incorrectly? Did I do something incorrectly? And if I didn't, then what are we dealing with? So I think even with the trust, if I allowed you into my circle, then I want to feel safe enough to come to you and say, hey, peace, listen, I was at your event and this happened. And for you to say, okay, and take it from a I heard what you're saying, and I'm going to see if I can put these pieces together, as opposed to, no, that didn't happen, or you couldn't possibly be remembering that correctly, or no, this person
Absolutely.
would never do that, or this person would never say that, or, how dare you say anything about the pastor, and then you don't know who to go to, because at that point it's like, am I crazy?
Yeah,
Did
it's
this
so
really
true.
happen? Did this really happen to me? Or
Yeah.
am I really making a big deal of it? And I just think people get lost in that. And I'm just talking about simple stuff. I'm not even talking about the really, really bad stuff, like, abuses of, like, sexual abuse and things like that. I'm just talking about, maybe I didn't wipe the table off correctly or something. It started this big, snowball effect. But I don't know. I just feel like trying to figure out how to help people in that situation when they're broken, because a lot of people, when I started this, a lot of people ran up to me and were like, I'm sick of church, and they were like, blah 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 blah, I'm tired of this, I'm not ever going back. And I'm like, wow, like, how did you get to this place? And there's
Mhm.
multiple offenses, and they just keep growing and growing and growing, and you didn't talk to the right people, or you talked to the right people, but then they didn't guide you in the spiritual way. um and then you end up just leaving, the church, because, especially one of my friends was in, like, I guess, a church that became more like a, I don't want to say a clique, but everyone jumped on the bandwagon of the leader, and no one jumped on the side of the person who was actually offended or hurt. And to the point of, they treated her differently, and then she left because she felt awkward every time she went there.
Mhm.
And she was like, I don't think I'm gonna go back to church. And I'm like, you have to go back to church, because, Christ did not hurt you. God did not hurt
Yes,
you. We have to
absolutely.
get past people, because people are human beings, and,
Absolutely.
they will do things that you
They
have
will.
to, maneuver around. But at the end of the day, you know, we have to rebuild that relationship with Christ if it's been, tainted by whatever someone has done. And I
Yeah.
think that's, like, a really hard thing. But I always kind of ask people, like, what do you think the practical step is, for someone who's trying to work through or restore their trust in the church,
Yeah.
you know, in that type of scenario?
Well, one thing I was going to mention, just with what you were just talking about, is that there's such an attempt to protect the organization, because
Hmm.
church has become corporate business, unfortunately. And anyone who's worked in the corporate world will know that the corporate business is all about the structure and the
Hmm.
model. And so if you come against that, even if you have valid concerns, valid complaints, you're coming against some, they're going to put the wall up. It's like, oh, no, 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 you're not going to mess with what we got going here. So it's like, it's almost like you can't win. And so really, you know, oftentimes it's too late, but really it's about knowing the signs of a healthy church and knowing, okay, this is a place that I don't need to be involved here, because the church was never supposed to look like a business. It was supposed to look like a family, and that doesn't happen much anymore. And so now I'm like, if the church doesn't model family, kingdom family, the way it was in Acts, where they did life together and they ate together and they shared together, quite honestly, you may just find yourself in a church hurt situation if you stay there
Mm.
long. So unfortunately, that's the situation.
Wow.
And I had something else to respond to, and I forget what it was. So hopefully they'll come back.
Okay.
But your question was, what are the practical steps, right, towards
Yeah. What do
recovery?
you think the practical steps are, just to even start trying to get past
Yeah.
this?
Well, certainly pulling yourself out, because oftentimes people stay too long because they get shamed. Oh, if I step away, what are they going to think of me? Da, 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 da. If you are in a harmful situation, doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a marriage, abuse. I'm not saying divorce, but separation is healthy if you're in a harmful
Mm.
situation. So if your church is causing you harm, and again, these can be subjective.
Yeah.
Someone else's idea of harm is different from your idea of harm. But guess what? You're the person. So if you feel like right now you cannot sustain the feelings you're having, the emotions you're having, the response you're having, you
Hmm.
need to separate yourself. It may not be forever, but certainly for a time. But the trap is that people separate themselves into isolation. And so you can't do that. You need to separate yourself into a trusted relationship with a mentor. And now that's where people typically go wrong, right? Because they find somebody who's just gonna join their pity party and bash their church. And that's not gonna get you healthy either. So truly, I always say you need to find an unbiased party and get counseling.
That's good.
Unbiased party, not somebody. And I mean, guess an atheist may not. So it's not about what the person believes in. It is, are they professional enough to be unbiased?
Mhm.
You might be able to have an atheist counselor. Now, I wouldn't recommend it. But if they're good at their job, they can counsel you healthy. Okay.
Right.
Now, I would recommend a Christian counselor, of course. But here's the trap: even Christian counselors can make excuses and try to protect the church structure. So you really have to pray and use wisdom. Lord, I want to go to someone who's just going to help me understand what I'm feeling, what happened, who's going to help me be introspective, not tell me what they think I need to hear. And start there. And also just surround yourself with people who love you.
Yes.
So, in a nurturing environment, everyone can get healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Very
But
true.
certainly, having wise, sound counsel and having friends who are Christians in your life is pivotal to recovery. Now, maybe those friends who are Christian may not be the ones counseling you, but let them still be loving you. Let them still be showing you the love of God, because that they need to counteract what you experience from your church.
Yes.
Don't separate yourself from all Christians, especially the ones who never harmed you.
Yeah,
So yeah.
that's true. Yeah. And that isolation, if you go into isolation, then your mind starts playing tricks on you, and you you come up with all kind of scenarios of what's going on. So you definitely have to talk to somebody and talk through it, and get some people around you who can really help you. And hopefully you find an environment, that's healthy,
Yes.
nurturing, and they
Yes.
love on you and, try to restore you back to being that healthy Christian person, so that you can go back to a church. So I think that those are some really good steps. Just find someone to talk to, keep people around you, community, like the Bible says, we should be in community with each other. I think those are really good, good,
Absolutely.
good.
And people who will be honest with you too, because sometimes the church hurt that you experience might be because you have some growing up to do.
True.
And if everyone's telling you what you want to hear, they're not doing you a service. They're doing you a disservice. So absolutely finding people who are honest with you, Christian friends who will give you sound counsel, and an unbiased counselor who can help you with some of the emotional things you're dealing with.
That's really good. Really good. 'Cause sometimes we go to the wrong folks.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, yeah. I have a story about that too. I won't belabor the topic. But, woo, gotta be careful who you tell, because
So true. It's so true. And people might have been shocked that I just said even an atheist counselor might be able to give you sound counsel. But can we not agree that some people in the church, some people who are Christians, can give you some of the worst advice?
that's
So
true.
we have to be honest in who we go to. Just because someone wears the label Christianity doesn't mean that they're able to give you life-giving advice. So
Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely. Now you said you had a thought. Did it come back to you?
I don't know anymore. I don't think so. I think I got
Okay,
off the
it's
trail.
okay, it's okay.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I just want to thank you for sharing your journey. And this, I kind of heard your story a little bit prior to me coming to your event, and I was just blown away by how wonderful it was. And I think people were healed even in that atmosphere. So I encourage you. You're doing a great job. Continue to keep pushing. It's needed. This is a conversation that a lot of people don't want to have. Um,
Mhm, mhm.
and the stigmatism around it, like how dare you come against the church? And I keep telling people, I'm not coming against the church. I'm coming for the church.
Come on.
So
Yes. Yes.
I'm
Yes.
coming for the church. I'm not coming against the
Yes.
church, because how can we, walk together if it just doesn't make sense to me? So
Right, right. It's only because you care that you want to see things better.
exactly, yeah,
Yeah.
because
Likewise. Likewise.
there's a lot. there's a lot of people not going to church for
Yes.
various reasons. And if
Oh,
we,
it's heartbreaking.
yeah, and if we don't jump in there, and it's great to go to church and have a great time and worship and do all the things that we do, but it's still a dying world out there, and people who have not heard of Christ or haven't been introduced to him in a healthy way. So there's so much work for us to do, and somebody's got to start doing something. And I'm not saying
So,
people aren't doing anything, so let me take that back. But we have to take on our own individual, stance and say, what am I going to do towards this? Am I going to just
yeah,
talk about it, or am I going to try
exactly.
to change it?
Absolutely.
That was a little better.
I agree. I
You know,
agree.
trying to keep the grass green over here. Yeah. So I really appreciate you coming on with me and just talking about your journey and giving some insight into things that have happened to you. Um, our listeners, are it's a mixed bag of people that I've heard from. So I think they will enjoy just hearing another perspective, and even you sharing that this wasn't your first time at the rodeo. You've been there a few times, and you've still been able to bounce back. So I think that's really good for people to hear. Like there is, a light at the end of this tunnel that
So
you might
much.
find yourself in if you can just keep walking, keep focusing, keep going forward, keep asking for help, that you actually can get to the other side of it and pull somebody else up. So
Yes.
yeah.
I can say right now that I have a handful of wonderful church leader friends that I can that have truly redeemed what it looks like to be a leader in the body of Christ for me,
That's
that I can
awesome.
look up to, and I can say that this is how it's done. So for every person that has hurt me or done it wrong, there's somebody doing it right. And so that's why I say don't give up. Don't give up. There are healthy congregations out there. There are healthy leaders. There are healthy pastors. There's a healthy body out there. And
Hmm.
I have some tips that I want to leave because
Okay.
um, a little while ago, I came up with what I felt like the signs of an unhealthy church were and the signs of a healthy church. So I
Okay.
want to drop these bullet points. And so
Yes.
people listening, you can take these, chew on them. And when you see these things, if you're not part of a church body, use these as guidelines for deciding on whether you need to be or join, or whether you need to join a certain church body. So that
Right.
I believe the 5 unhealthy signs, if I can take a little bit more time and share these.
Oh, let's go.
Let's do it. These are 5 signs of an unhealthy church body. Okay, number one, prominent leaders repeatedly leave in silence. Number two, members come and go like a revolving door. Okay, number three, you are encouraged not to communicate with those who have left. Number four, those who have left are consistently villainized. And number five, members typically associate only with other members. If you see
Okay.
any of those 5 things happening, you're probably part of an unhealthy church.
Drop the mic.
Okay?
We're done.
No, because
Oh my gosh.
but I always like to leave, like you said, the grass green. I like to leave the grass green. So I'm gonna give you these 4 points that you're part of a healthy church. Number one, the leaders ensure that the members are emotionally and spiritually healthy before asking them to serve. Number two, the church operates as a team rather than a one man or one woman show. Number three, they are receptive to the feedback of their members. And number four, they are intentional about helping you grow in your individual gift, even if your gift will not ultimately benefit their church. Think on that. And that's come from experience.
That last one though. Woo! Can you say that again?
Yeah, absolutely. They are intentional about helping you grow in your individual gifts, even if your gift will not ultimately benefit their church.
Well, Miss
These
Peace,
are
I'm telling
mhm.
you, that one right there.
Yeah,
Woo!
big one. It's a big one.
Say loud. Okay. That was really good.
Thank
That
you.
was
Thank
really
you.
good.
Yeah,
That was really good. That's a big one too. That's
it's a
that's
big
now
one.
that's maturity.
That's a
That's
maturity. Are they
maturity.
invested in you for who you are or for what you
Yes.
can do?
That's maturity right there. And that's like next level, honestly. Okay, I'm not gonna harp on it. I'm gonna just think about it later. Thank you so much. I appreciate that though. I mean, these great nuggets, even the things to look for. I mean, I thought that was excellent. Because I think that sometimes we go in with these, blinders on. Well, first of all, we go into churches, kind of not really knowing what to look for. And then,
Mhm.
you kind of like you go in with blinders sometimes because you don't want to necessarily see a lot of stuff. You just want to try to find a place where you can worship and then you find yourself in a toxic situation, as time goes on. And then, truth be told, a lot of people say, don't leave, don't leave, don't leave. You just got to work
Yeah,
through it. But that's not
totally.
always the case. Like sometimes you do have to leave. I'm all for trying to reconcile in that church, but if you can't get it back to a healthy um, environment for both parties, then you probably do have to go. You probably do have to leave, but leave on the right terms. I mean, I've left
Mhm.
churches and I've left on good terms. Like I can
Agree.
always go back because I didn't leave because the church hurt in the first place. But,
Yes.
there's a way to leave. Mm,
Hmm.
And if you do things the right way, you should be able to come back. And so, yeah, that's
Things in honor. Always doing things in honor. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So, yeah, so that just wraps up our episode for today. I thank you again very much, Miss Peace. E.
EK.
K. E-K. You see, I was taking it really slow, like E-K. Miss Peace E-K, thank you so very much for joining us and being here with us. I enjoyed this thoroughly. I hope you will come back. We are going to be doing this through August. So, if you want to come back and drop some more nuggets on us, we would love to have you to come back. And to all of our listeners, we will be back with more thought provoking. These were thought provoking discussions today for sure. Very soon. So until then, I ask that you just take care and be inspired. Have a good one.
Bye bye.